a pharmaceutical company focused on the loss of muscle in patients who are going through weight loss therapy with the GLP-1 drugs. And with me is Mitchell Steiner, the president, CEO, and chairman, to explain what it is you're doing. Enobosarm, that is the drug. And you know, it's interesting, when I was doing a little research on this, and I have friends who are on these GLP-1s, and they talk about the muscle loss and how they feel like they need to go to the gym. So this is a big issue. Explain this drug and where you are with it.
Yeah, the situation that we're dealing with is that GLP-1s have taken us by storm, and they work. It used to be you lose about 5% weight with dieting and modifications, but GLP-1s are taking 15-20% of your weight. And the problem is that, you know, when you think of weight loss, you think you're losing fat, but you're not. It's indiscriminate weight loss, meaning you're losing about half of it is lean mass or muscle. So you get no points for losing muscle. So if I lost 20 pounds, 10 pounds of that's lean mass. Oh my gosh, that's not good. So for younger patients, we're not quite sure what that means. But for older patients, older than the age of 60, they start out with less muscle because with age you lose muscle and you lose strength. So even Big Pharma says, you know, that's the patient population we need to focus on. Even though the younger population clearly sees they're losing muscle, they're getting weaker, they're having trouble doing things they could do before. But remember, GLP-1s are creating a wonderful situation, because when you lose fat, you actually get better. Your cardiovascular gets better. All these bad things that happen to you because of heart disease gets better. Diabetes gets better. So how do you make it so that you get both? Meaning, get the benefits of a GLP-1, but mitigate some of the side effects. So Enobosarm comes in. It's a drug that I've been personally developing with my former company, GTX, and this one, Veru, for, let's say, about 15 years. And we started out in the frailty space. But frailty is older patients that lose muscle. And as they lose muscle, they lose balance, become weak, they fall, they break their hip. That's bad. And so we were developing Enobosarm because think of Enobosarm as an agent that's like a testosterone agent. Testosterone, we know, works. It builds muscle, burns fat, builds bone. You can see what bodybuilders look like when they get chiseled. They get muscle, they lose their fat. But women can't take testosterone because they get masculinized with facial hair and acne and all those other things they don't want to happen. So we created a non-steroidal, so it's not steroid, and a non-steroidal agent that's oral that acts like testosterone, but doesn't have the masculinizing effects in women and doesn't affect prostate and stuff like that in men. Think of it as a neutral, pure anabolic agent that builds muscle, builds bone, burns fat, independently burns fat. Now you say, okay, I got it. The medical problem we're dealing with is we want people to stay on GLP-1s, and we want to get rid of, we want to preserve that muscle. We don't want that indiscriminate weight loss, meaning we don't want it to be tissue non-selective. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to take a GLP-1, lose that same amount of weight, but it's all fat?
Yeah.
That's the goal, right? Remember, fat's the bad guy. And that's kind of what Enobosarm showed.
Yeah. Now, and this is in late stage clinical trials, right?
Phase 2B. So
okay.
Mid stage. And the next stage would be phase 3. So this is the stage before phase 3, and phase 3 is before approval. And we just finished a study of 168 men and women. In fact, 70% were women that had obesity or overweight, and over the age of 60. And starting semaglutide, which is Wegovy. Wegovy and Ozempic, you've heard. But Wegovy and Ozempic are the same drug, and they're starting it for the first time. And we asked the question: can we stop that indiscriminate loss of lean mass during the active weight loss phase? And then we asked the second question, because pause for a moment. What happens when you stop with GLP-1 is your body reacts by overeating, and you get that weight back, and you get the fat back. And it happens almost in such a short period of time that people are really discouraged because they lose weight on the drug. They stop the drug for whatever reason, and it comes right back.
Right. Well, they're kind of expensive. They're expensive drugs too. So I think, you know, a lot of people trying to save some money.
Yeah. And so if you can stop that fat regain, remember, fat's the bad guy. If you can stop the fat regain, that would be pretty cool. Yeah. So what we're thinking happens is when you take a drug like like Wegovy, what happens is your body goes into a starvation state. And during starvation, just like if you're in the wild, you lose fat and you lose muscle indiscriminately. In comes the Enobosarm and says, muscle, you're going to hold on, you're going to stay. Fat, we're going to burn more. And by the way, we're going to burn more fat so that the weight loss you have is essentially the same. Okay, so we're kind of making it super selective for tissue, and that's what we show.
Yeah.
So in the 168 page, we show that.
How did you measure like the muscle tone and the physical function?
So the great question. So the way we measured body composition. That's the catchword. So what you just mentioned was how do you measure muscle? How do you measure fat? It's called body composition. And we did that two ways. We did it with a machine called a DEXA scan. People heard of DEXA scans for bone, osteoporosis, DEXA scan. DEXA also measures muscle. So you can actually measure lean mass and muscle and fat. And so you can see that body composition changes. But we also did it objectively by looking at function, meaning muscle physical function by stair climb. Stair climb is an activity they're living. Older patients, if they have a tough time with stair climb, it predicts bad things like falls and fractures and hospitalization, increased deaths. So if you can keep a patient from losing function, that would be pretty cool. And so in our study, we measured those two things. We measured what happens to lean mass and what happens to function. And what's interesting, because the biggest controversy was, are we in trouble? Meaning that losing this lean mass doesn't really matter. Well, it did matter. We were able to show in the patients on placebo, just Wegovy, that they had the weight that they lost. So they lost the weight. The weight that they lost in 16 weeks, about 32% of it was lean, 68% of it was fat. The Enobosarm, the 3 milligram group, was almost less than 1% lean, 99% fat, 99% fat. So it accomplished what we wanted to remove just the fat. But the other thing we saw in the patients taking just the Wegovy, that at 16 weeks in stair climb power, they lost about 7 to 8 years worth of function.
Wow.
In 16 weeks and 42.6%. So almost half your patients had a greater than 10% decline in stair climb power. So it matters. So if people are feeling bad and feeling weak, we measured that objectively.
Amazing. Okay, so final question. You mentioned it's going into stage 3. You clearly had encouraging results so far. So when does that trial start, and when might we, if all goes well, see this?
So we got some catalysts coming up. So we've already shown that we can preserve lean mass, burn more fat, and preserve function in patients on an Enobosarm in combination with a GLP-1. Okay, so that's done. The next one is what happens when you stop a GLP-1. Remember, we talked about the fat regain. That data will come out this quarter. And then with all that information, we go to the FDA and have a meeting. And the meeting with the FDA is to decide what the phase 3 program looks like. We expect that meeting to happen in the third quarter. So if all goes well, we'll be in phase 3 in first quarter of 2026.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. Please keep us up to date on that, because it's something that is really needed for people out there. Thank you, Mitchell Steiner, so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye now.